And that's just a beautiful, beautiful introduction music that we got there. I love our theme song here.
All right, well, welcome to Bible Study from the Garage. Today we are going to talk 1 Samuel chapter 25, verses 2 to 42, which is a story of Nabal and Abigail and also David.
Yeah, I want to offer my welcome to everybody too. It's a fantastic opportunity to do a little Bible study here. We're trying to do 10 minutes of Bible study, and we've got a great soap opera of a Bible lesson today. A great story with a lot of action, conflict, intrigue, and maybe even some leadership questions about politics that fit our lives today, or maybe get us to think about how do we act when we get angry? How do we deal with frustrations or feeling slighted? So really looking forward to today. I'm going to have Scott read it for us today.
If you'd like to follow along. There was a man in Mon whose property was in Carmel. The man was very rich. He had 3,000 sheep and 1,000 goats. He was shearing his sheep in Carmel. Now the name of the man was Nabal, and the name of his wife was Abigail. The woman was clever and beautiful, but the man was surly and mean. He was a Calebite. David heard in the wilderness that Nabal was shearing his sheep. So David sent 10 young men, and David said to the young men, "Go up to Carmel and go to Nabal and greet him in my name. Thus you shall salute him. Peace be to you, and peace be to your house, and peace be to all that you have. I hear that you have shearers. Now your shepherds have been with us, and we did them no harm, and they missed nothing all the time they were in Carmel. Ask your young men, and they will tell you. Therefore, let my young men find favor in your sight, for we have come on a feast day. Please give whatever you have at hand to your servants and to the son of David." When David's young men came, they said all this to Nabal in the name of David, and then they waited. But Nabal answered David's servants, "Who is David? Who is the son of Jesse? There are many servants today who are breaking away from their masters. Shall I take my bread and water and the meat that I have butchered for my shearers and give it to the men who have come from I do not know where?" So David's young men turned away and came back and told him all this. David said to his men, "Every man strap on his sword." And every one of them strapped on his sword. David also strapped on his sword. And about 400 men went up after David, while 200 remained with the baggage. But one of the young men told Abigail, Nabal's wife, "David sent messengers out of the wilderness to salute our master, and he shouted insults at them. Yet the men were very good to us, and were suffered no harm, and we never missed anything when we were in the fields, as long as we were with them. They were a wall to us both day and night, all the while we were with them, keeping the sheep. Now therefore know this, and consider what you should do, for evil has been decided against our master and against all his house. He is so ill-natured that no one can speak to him." Then Abigail hurried and took 200 loaves, 2 skins of wine, 5 sheep ready dressed, 5 measures of parched grain, 100 clusters of raisin, and 200 cakes of figs. She loaded them on donkeys, and said to her young men, "Go on ahead of me. I am coming after you." But she did not tell her husband Nabal. As she rode on the donkey and came down under cover of the mountain, David and his men came down toward her, and she met them. Now David had said, "Surely it was in vain that I protected all that this fellow has in the wilderness, so that nothing was missed of all that belonged to him. But he has returned me evil for good. God do so to David, and more also, if by morning I leave so much as one male of all who belong to him." When Abigail saw David, she hurried and alighted from the donkey, and fell before David on her face, bowing to the ground. She fell at his feet and said, "Upon me alone, my lord, be the guilt. Please let your servant speak in your ears, and hear the words of your servant. My lord, do not take seriously this ill-natured fellow, Nabal, for as his name is, so is he. Nabal is his name, and folly is with him. But I, your servant, did not see the young man of my Lord, whom you sent. Now then, my Lord, as the Lord lives, and as you yourself live, since the Lord has restrained you from blood guilt and from taking vengeance with your own hand, now let your enemies and those who seek to do evil to my Lord be like Nabal. And now let this present that your servant has brought to my Lord be given to the young men who follow my Lord. Please forgive the trespass of your servant, for the Lord will certainly make my Lord a sure house, because my Lord is fighting the battles of the Lord. And evil shall not be found in you so long as you live. If anyone should rise up to pursue you and seek your life, the life of my Lord shall be bound in the bundle of the living under the care of the Lord your God. But the lives of your enemies shall be swung out as far from the hollow of a sling. When the Lord has done to my Lord according to all the good that he has spoken concerning you, and has appointed you prince over Israel, my Lord shall have no cause of grief or pangs of conscience for having shed blood without cause or for having saved himself. And when the Lord has dealt well with my Lord, then remember your servant. David said to Abigail, Blessed be the Lord, the God of Israel, who sent you to meet me today. Blessed be your good sense, and blessed be you, who have kept me today from blood guilt and from avenging myself by my own hand. For as surely as the Lord of God of Israel lives, who has restrained me from hurting you, unless you had hurried and come to meet me, truly by morning there would not have been left to Nabal so much as one male. Then David received from her hand what she had brought him. He said to her, Go up to your house in peace. See, I have heeded your voice, and I have granted your petition. Abigail came to Nabal. He was holding a feast in his house, like the feast of a king. Nabal's heart was merry within him, for he was very drunk. So she told him nothing at all until the morning light. In the morning, when the wine had gone out of Nabal, his wife told him these things, and his heart died within him. He became like a stone. About 10 days later, the Lord struck Nabal, and he died. When David heard that Nabal was dead, he said, Blessed be the Lord who has judged the case of Nabal's insult to me, and has kept back his servant from evil. The Lord has returned the evil doing of Nabal upon his own head. Then David sent and wooed Abigail to make her his wife. When David's servants came to Abigail at Carmel, they said to her, David has sent us to you to take you to him as his wife. She rose and bowed down, with her face to the ground, and said, Your servant is a slave to wash the feet of the servants of my Lord. Abigail got up hurriedly and rode away on a donkey. Her 5 maids attended her. She went after the messengers of David and became his wife. All right, we have a fantastic soap opera here. So we're coming out of the death of Samuel, and we have the story of Nabal and Abigail. Of course, David's part of the story, a critical part of the story. And so we see different titles in different books. Some say Abigail, Nabal, Nabal, Abigail, David, Nabal, Abigail, and there are a variety of different things. But the names of the people are an important, foreshadowing of the story right from the very beginning. So Nabal actually means something very particular, and so does Abigail.
Yeah, it does. Nabal just simply means fool. And so it has something to say about his character. I'm not sure why a parent would name their kid that, but often in the Bible, people's names form their character and are a clue to us as we read through what the story is really going to show us. Abigail means joy of her father. And so it's a wonderful woman's name. And as a person who has an unusual name, it's great to think about what names mean.
There's a situation here in Carmel where we have Nabal, who's very wealthy, thousands of head of hoofed animals, and he also he has a wife. I assume he has a family, although it's not mentioned. But he has a significant number of shepherds and shearers, and we have David and about 400 men that are on his land. And what would be the circumstances that would probably create a situation like that?
Right. It's an interesting place in the Bible that King Saul is still alive and still active. He is supposedly the ruler and the authority. However, Samuel has anointed David king as well, and that means there's two kings. There's competing authorities for the people's allegiance, and people are trying to be gathered together under David as an insurrectionist, is the way many people would look at it if you were a loyalist to King Saul. And so the fact that David is there with his warriors, with his young men, he's not there just to have a party at the beach. He's there because they're warriors, and they're fighting for what they want the nation to become and for what they're hoping their people is going to be.
So with the death of Samuel, we have these competing kings. We have David here on Nabal's land.
Yeah.
And Nabal is benefiting from this, and it begins to create some conflict.
He absolutely is. Kind of in the old days, we would say the mafia maybe was people who offered protection. And so I've heard some shopkeepers would, pay a little money. Maybe it was extortion. But the idea was that the men who had the muscle were going to make sure there weren't any thieves, weren't any robbers, weren't anybody who came to take advantage of you. And David kind of feels that Nabal is getting a benefit from him and his men being around.
So hospitality is a very important idea, if we put it in historical context.
Right.
And so Nabal is benefiting from David's presence. David doesn't necessarily feel respected.
Right. Yeah. Over and over again, that hospitality part that you lifted up is really important in the scriptures, especially in the Old Testament. Hospitality, even to strangers, people you don't know. But this idea that David says, he and his men have been there and they haven't stolen anything. They're not thieves. They're not taking stuff that doesn't belong to them. And so he sends his young men saying, hey, could we have some of this from you? And Nabal says, who are you?
Yeah, who is this David guy?
Yeah, and so Nabal isn't going to side with David. Does that mean he's a loyalist and is following King Saul? But he definitely doesn't want to get in hot water politically with anybody by supporting. So he dismisses him. He won't give him anything and really disrespects him, as you said. One of my friends uses it this way. Says, that he got done dirty. And that's really an honor and a shame thing. And in the ancient Middle East, honor, shame, and pride, your name and reputation. Still to this day, we have this understanding of, you disrespected my good name, or you didn't treat me the way I should be treated. I have some honor and some pride to defend here.
It's a little bit different than the Hatfield and the McCoys, but
it's going to end in frustration and a conflict.
So this is what happens, right? And so we have a festival. We have the disrespect, the uninviting, and David begins to get angry. And they armor up.
Yeah, not just angry. He's violent. I don't want to say this is Game of Thrones kind of stuff here, but a little bit. I mean, he says he's going to wipe them out completely. He's going to, completely take everybody off the map.
But here we have the beautiful and intelligent Abigail does something diplomatic.
Isn't that interesting? One of my friends that I got to work with, he said his family was much more a Cold War family than a hot war. Here we kind of see the differences of, the passive aggressive, Minnesota people who would send an emissary. We know how to manipulate behind the scenes a little bit there. And, she sees the conflict that's coming. She understands what's in store for her husband and her house. And she doesn't get permission, which would be a big thing back then. A wife wasn't free to just go out and do her own thing. She had to have permission from her husband, and she didn't get that here.
She took quite a bit of stuff. So it was essentially to pay some sort of homage, but also she lays in a prone position.
Yeah.
Pay respect to David, something that Nabal wouldn't do.
Right. It would really be the thing you would do for a king. When you come into the court of a king, you're going to go down, and really the idea is you're going to put yourself in a vulnerable position so that that you show. Just like in cultures that bow, that is one of those positions that show you're defenseless, show that you are humble and coming in. And like you said, is it a peace offering? Is she buying them off? Is she, willing to give this great feast to David and his men? It's maybe one of those things we see even in our culture and society today. A cool-headed woman is able to calm down, a man who's gotten a little hot-headed and a little angry. For me, we see that in the Bible over and over again. Often the women who are lifted up as characters are able to use their wits, able to use their diplomacy. Queen Esther is one of those people who saves her people, and other people in the scriptures. Often these women are presented as very shrewd managers and people who are able to, through their wits, avert disaster that the men have kind of created.
So that's exactly what's happened, right? And as a result, David does not go to a hot war and doesn't go and kill off all the men, if you will.
Yeah, and she even she appeals to his honor and character and says, if you do this, you're going to have blood on your hands.
Yeah.
And there is going to be guilt for that. And she appeals to his honor and what kind of man he is. And he sees it. And she is able to talk him out of making a really bad decision.
So the scene switches now to the festival. Yeah. And Abigail heads back, and Nabal is essentially drunk, or merry. I'm merry on coffee right now, but he's very merry. And it appears he has some sort of a stroke after she tells him what she's done. He seems to, turns into a stone. So perhaps he had a stroke and he's laying there, he's still alive, but he's not quite dead. Takes him 10 days to die.
Yeah, it's one of those amazing things that David, doesn't have to take vengeance into his own hands. It says that God himself takes vengeance on Nabal. It's one of those interesting things that even in the church, when we talk about, do I have to get even with people? Do I have to repay, evil with evil? Or do I repay evil with good? How do I treat other people, even when they've done me wrong, even when they've disrespected me? What we see here, God makes it right, is what the Old Testament wants to tell us. God kills him. He doesn't live long. We maybe would talk about mercy and generosity and a God who loves us and doesn't kill the wicked.
We're Old Testament.
This is Old Testament here. And so we see God, reaches down.
We have a different contract today, but the stories are still important and teach us what we need to do. So Nabal, from David's point of view, brings evil when David believes he's brought good. David doesn't have, his bloodthirst is not satisfied, or his blood guilt. Yeah. And of course, he doesn't go to the celebration. But Abigail telling him what she's done, telling Nabal what she's done, maybe that's what killed him.
Sometimes wives bring bad news to their husbands. Yeah, and the shock, it says, the shock, the disappointment. Yeah. Today we're talking about a lot of stress between husbands and wives as people have had to be cooped up in the same house together. And a lot of people are talking about, how do you have healthy relationships? How do you communicate? Secrets probably aren't a key to a happy marriage here. We find out she's got a secret from her husband and does something behind his back, which doesn't end out very well.
Not for Nabal, but
yeah, for her.
She becomes a wife of David.
She does. She becomes a queen. And this is really a story of where she came from, and really lifts up her character as a generous person, as somebody who provides hospitality and somebody who thinks quickly. So it's really an origin story of where one of the queens of King David comes from, what kind of character she has. And we don't have queens today, but if we think about the first lady and think
I don't know about your house, but
you have a queen. I get it. I get it. Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry. Sorry. I got to think before I talk. And, this idea of where the royal family comes from. Even today, people are very curious about the royals.
Speaking of curiosity, if you want to read on what happens in the rest of chapter 25, it's quite interesting. But this fascinating soap opera story is what our second Bible study from the Garage was about today. And we hope you join us for the future.